Hey guys, my name is Leland and I'll be talking to you about externalities. So, what is an externality? An externality is a consequence of an economic activity experienced by unrelated third parties, and this can be either positive or negative. Externalities are not reflected in the cost of the goods or services provided, like the pollination of surrounding crops by bees kept for honey. This phenomenon is known as the spillover effect. For example, pollution emitted by a factory that spoils the surrounding environment and affects the health of nearby residents is an example of a negative externality. The effect of a well-educated labor force on the productivity of a company is an example of a positive externality. Externalities, like pollution and the like, are one of the main reasons why governments step in with increased regulators, so that businesses do not get carried away and cause an overall negative effect to society. Most externalities are negative. Pollution, for example, is a well-known negative externality. A corporation may decide to cut costs and increase profits by implementing new operations that are more harmful for the environment. The corporation realizes costs in the form of expanding its operations, but also generate returns that are higher than the costs. However, the externality also increases the aggregate cost to the economy and society, making it a negative externality. Externalities are said to be negative when the social costs outweigh the private costs, and in negative externalities, the optimum quantity is less than the market quantity, but the optimum price is greater than the market price. The production of negative externalities that imposes a cost on the people that aren't directly involved in producing, and therefore supply decreases. For example, when rainforests are cut down to make furniture and other items that need wood, that imposes costs on the natives who are deprived of their home and on the global population as a whole due to global warming. When negative externalities are consumed, that too imposes a cost on those not directly involved in consumption, and then the demand decreases. For example, smoking in public, it is taken in by other people, which is secondhand smoking, which causes health problems for society. And now we see the graph. So the graph on the left is a normal market. The supply is the private marginal cost, and the demand line is the private marginal benefit. But once you add in the negative externality, the marginal social cost is above the private marginal cost, which drives the socially optimal point down. So the quantity goes down, whereas the market's point is still lower, and this leads to market failure. Now, the last thing we'll talk about in terms of negative externalities is the optimal amount. So when you're producing socially efficiently, where marginal benefit equals marginal social cost is usually where you should produce with negative externalities. In terms of government regulation, they try to limit the production of it so that you still get the product out, but the negative effect to society is decreased. And the total social gain equals the total social cost because firms ignore the external costs. And now we come to the happier side of the equation, positive externalities. Not all externalities are negative, some are clearly positive. They occur when there's a positive gain to a third party on both the private and social level. For example, research and development conducted by a company can be a positive externality because it both increases the private profits of a company and also has the added benefit of increasing the general level of knowledge within a society. So, say Google has the Google Maps application. It makes profits off of it, but society too also benefits because Google Maps is a very useful GPS tool. Positive externalities have social returns that are higher than private returns. They decrease deadweight loss, and the optimum quantity is greater than the market quantity, but the optimum price is less than the market price. When we look at the production versus the consumption of positive externalities, it's pretty much the reverse of what we saw with negative externalities. When positive externalities are produced, society benefits clearly, and the supply increases. For example, a farmer grows apple trees. The external benefit is that he provides the nectar for bees of another beekeeper who gets increased honey as a result of the farmer's orchard. In terms of consumption, it's when society benefits from consuming an item. The demand increases, and an example of this is a worker gaining skills from an internship that he goes to. Say you take a 3-year training course in IT, you gain skills, but other people in the economy, other firms, can benefit from your own knowledge. Here we see graphs of positive externalities in production. The left graph is the same as the negative externality slide, but on the graph on the right, we see that the private marginal cost is greater than the social marginal cost, and therefore the optimum point is below the equilibrium point, which causes the quantity to increase and the price to decrease. And although some externalities are positive, they can give way to market failure, and almost all externalities are considered to be technical externalities. And these have an impact on the consumption and production opportunities of third parties, but unfortunately the price of consumption does not include the externalities. And this causes a difference between the gain and loss of private individuals and the gain and loss of society as a whole. And many a time, the actions of organizations, corporations, or even individuals result in positive private gains, but are a negative effect overall to the economy. And this is why many economists consider technical externalities to be weaknesses in a market. And this is why people advocate for governments to curb negative externalities through taxation regulation. And we see this even today with environmental activists and animal rights activists. And in order to prevent market failure, governments have to somehow increase economic efficiency. And they curb negative externalities by having taxes, output restrictions with quotas. But with positive externalities, they will give the corporation subsidies to produce more of it because it has an overall positive benefit to the economy.